Cruising down my son-in-law's street, I figured I'd drop in for a quick hello until a familiar silver sedan parked by his driveway made my stomach drop. That luxury vehicle belonged in my own garage. A dark feeling washed over me. I crept toward the living room window, careful to stay completely silent. The conversation I eavesdropped on would shatter my reality completely. But before we dive into this nightmare, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and drop your city in the comments section below. Once that clueless old man signs those documents, our entire scheme will be complete. My spouse's voice floated outward. It felt like absolute poison entering my bloodstream. I remained perfectly still beside my vehicle, my keys resting uselessly inside the ignition switch. Just moments earlier, I had phoned my child to arrange a pleasant dinner surprise. She told me she was out, mentioning her husband was busy reviewing legal briefs at home, yet her mother's shiny car sat right there in plain sight. I turned off my motor and walked toward the glass, my knees shaking violently. Peeking through the slightly open blinds, their betrayal was crystal clear. The woman I married 25 years ago rested comfortably on the sofa, acting like the homeowner. Meanwhile, the young attorney stood near the wall, wearing a deeply arrogant smirk I always hated. "The schedule is flawless," he stated, sounding incredibly proud of his legal strategy. "We submit the paperwork this summer, citing a broken marriage. Thanks to recent local laws, she takes 50% of everything earned during your union, alongside permanent financial support." My spouse let out a soft chuckle. I used to think that sound was beautiful. "His building company holds a $12 million valuation alone," she calculated. "Throw in our rental properties, the summer cabin, and various stock portfolios. The grand total hits close to $20 million. My fingers trembled uncontrollably as I grabbed my mobile device. I tapped the capture button right as the young lawyer resumed his arrogant speech. The best element here is his absolute blindness. The guy remains completely oblivious that we spent the past several months copying his financial data. We hold duplicates of every bank record, property title, and corporate assessment." He pointed toward a thick yellow envelope resting nearby. He basically handed over the keys to his fortune. "2 solid years acting like a faithful partner," she replied, staring at her perfectly polished fingernails. Faking interest in his tedious construction tales, pretending to feel sorry when he stressed over employee wages. Honestly, the poor fool actually thinks I adore him. Suddenly, my shoe crushed a dry branch. Inside, they immediately stopped talking. Both heads whipped toward the glass like frightened animals. I slammed my back against the exterior brick, my chest pounding furiously, cold perspiration forming despite the cool springtime weather. "Did you catch that noise?" Her tone spiked with sudden paranoia. "Probably a stray animal," he answered after a brief silence. "You are worrying too much. Would it be terrible if he found out before our trap springs?" "He absolutely won't. That guy could never recognize a plot, even if it slapped him directly." His answering chuckle contained pure disrespect. "Come the fall season, you will be officially separated, incredibly rich and completely independent." I forced my body to remain perfectly still until they started talking again. My mobile device silently recorded every single toxic sentence. When I finally sneaked back to my driver's seat a quarter-hour later, my universe had completely flipped upside down. 2.5 decades of partnership suddenly downgraded to a scheming session between my spouse and her daughter's husband. That thick yellow envelope burned in my mind. Countless weeks of gathering intelligence. While I dedicated 16 hours a day toward building our family's wealth, they secretly mapped out my total ruin. Sitting behind my steering wheel, I stared downward at my scarred palms. These exact fingers created a massive contracting firm from absolute scratch. They funded every single luxury my spouse ever desired. They even guided her toward the altar when her own dad boycotted our ceremony. Her cruel words looped inside my brain. The poor fool actually thinks I adore him. The truly agonizing truth? Until just a half hour ago, I genuinely did. Suddenly, the front entryway swung open. She walked out initially, her expensive leather purse swinging effortlessly, while the young attorney followed closely behind, fixing his collar. Finding me waiting inside my vehicle completely shocked them both. Her facial expression mirrored someone getting physically struck. "What exactly brings you around?" Her pitch went unnaturally high. I forced my facial muscles into a relaxed mask, even though my blood pressure skyrocketed. Spending decades together usually meant I understood her emotions perfectly, but clearly, she was faking everything all along. "Just wrapped up inspecting a nearby work zone." I lied effortlessly, stepping out of my vehicle. "Figured I would pop over to check on our girl." The lawyer moved slightly forward, his defensive instincts taking over. His cold eyes scanned my features intensely, trying to find any inconsistencies in my explanation. "She stepped out," my spouse answered rapidly. I came over to assist him with organizing some client paperwork." That falsehood slipped from her mouth incredibly smoothly. It made me wonder exactly how many deceptions I swallowed blindly over our long history. "Really?" I maintained a cheerful, casual tone. "I assumed you had office hours until 6 o'clock. Didn't you bring up that big corporate presentation this morning?" Brief terror flashed across her face. "I departed earlier than expected. Terrible migraine." "That is unfortunate." I shifted my attention to the attorney, faking a warm demeanor. "Tackling an intriguing lawsuit? Dividing up marital wealth?" he answered impulsively, then quickly corrected his tone. "Representing a client going through separation. Highly complicated monetary assets." The dark humor there would be hilarious if it wasn't actively ruining my existence. Her gaze bounced rapidly between the two of us, analyzing the situation. "Exactly how long were you sitting out here?" she questioned. "Barely a minute. Why do you ask?" She flashed a completely fake grin. "You appear a bit rigid. Is everything all right?" The same individual secretly orchestrating my total bankruptcy was pretending to care about my stress levels. I nearly burst out laughing. "Tough shift, you understand the feeling." I waved a hand toward the young man. "I won't delay your document review any longer." "We actually just concluded our tasks," he stated, placing his palm comfortably on her lower spine. That movement looked incredibly natural and familiar. Exactly how long had that dynamic existed? Perfect timing, naturally. I grabbed my mobile device to glance at the hour, purposely making sure they noticed the screen. Neither person gasped, but I noticed his eyes intensely tracking my phone. "I probably need to get moving anyway. Tonight's meal won't prepare itself." She forced a hollow chuckle. "I will follow behind you shortly. I just have to gather a few items." No rush. I yanked my door open, then froze as if a sudden thought struck me. "Oh, by the way, your doctor's clinic phoned about moving your annual checkup. They mentioned a scheduling issue with your office." Her expression totally flatlined for a microsecond. The universal reaction of someone getting caught in a massive lie. Then, she bounced back with terrifying speed. "Must be their mistake. I will contact their reception desk later." "No problem at all. Those errors occur frequently." I dropped into my seat, my chest still throbbing. "Catch you both tonight." Reversing out into the street, I monitored their reflection in my mirrors. They remained completely stationary until my vehicle turned the block, then immediately leaned close together, whispering frantically. Their toxic triangle of deceit was fully operational. They guessed I possibly caught snippets of their chat. I understood they were actively trying to wreck my life. Yet, everybody played along, acting like everything remained wonderfully normal. She would commute back independently, carrying a bunch of prepared excuses regarding her missing work and visiting that specific house. She probably cooked up 10 solid reasons before even stepping through our doorway. However, she remained entirely oblivious regarding the digital files stored on my device. Almost 45 minutes of perfect audio that would alter our destinies. Merging into the main road, my grip stabilized. The initial trauma was fading, quickly replaced by a freezing, hyper-focused anger. They assumed they were tricking a clueless amateur. They were about to learn a brutal lesson. The short commute vanished amidst a haze of changing stoplights and automatic driving. My car navigated into our curved driveway automatically, cruising past the perfectly trimmed hedges she demanded we hire out, and the water feature she demanded for our second decade together. I lingered inside the cabin for a long while, looking at the residence I personally constructed back in the 90s. Every single timber, every screw, every carefully executed blueprint served as a passionate tribute to the person currently plotting to rip it all away. Pushing the main door open, the quietness hit me differently. It wasn't calming anymore. It felt completely empty. Her energy usually packed these hallways with stories about her morning, gripes regarding the locals, or thrills over recent shopping trips. Now I questioned what percentage of that was pure theatrical acting. A framed marriage portrait on the shelf grabbed my attention immediately. Late 1987. She looked stunning, wearing bright white fabric. I appeared stiff, wearing a borrowed suit. We both radiated what I sincerely thought was authentic joy. Back then, she was a young receptionist working at a local firm. I was pushing 40, my contracting enterprise finally making decent cash after a decade of surviving on cheap soup and exhaustion. We crossed paths during a holiday gathering. I had recently updated their corporate lobby. She giggled at my awful construction puns. That musical sound squeezed my heart with sudden desire. When I requested a proper date, she agreed so fast I assumed she was hoping I would ask. Our initial evening out at a local diner lasted until midnight. She paid close attention as I outlined my ambitions to construct something permanent, something that would survive long after we passed away. Her gaze lit up when I described the neighborhoods I wished to develop, the people I wanted to protect. "You aren't merely making buildings," she told me, grabbing my fingers across the booth. "You are making real homes." I offered her a ring just half a year later. Resting on our dining surface sat a greeting card from our latest milestone celebration. Her graceful handwriting filled the interior. "To my incredible partner, I appreciate you fulfilling every single wish I ever had. Looking forward to another quarter century together. Deepest affections, deepest affections." Those words felt like ash in my mouth. Wandering into the den, I saw my child's infant photos resting on the wooden displays I built while we expected her arrival. The day she entered this world was magical. My spouse looked drained but ecstatic, cradling our tiny infant like she was born for that exact purpose. Those initial seasons were genuinely spectacular. She jumped into parenting with incredible passion. School meetings, sports matches, lavish weekend celebrations. She recorded every milestone fiercely. "You are the greatest dad alive," she whispered during our kids' senior graduation, crying softly while we observed her take the stage. "She will achieve massive success thanks to the solid base you provided." The solid base I provided. Not we. Were the fractures visible even back then? Dropping into my favorite armchair, the exact piece she constantly whined was too hideous for company. I let the past flood my mind. A romantic boat trip up north. She seemed truly thrilled by the icy landscapes. Our daughter finishing university, everyone weeping happily. Winter holidays packed with cheer and messy wrapping paper. She always demanded massive displays that consumed weeks to set up. At what exact moment did appreciation rot into greedy entitlement? When did thanks for giving us this morph into we are owed significantly more? That digital audio file contained the brutal truth. She hadn't harbored romantic feelings for a very long time, perhaps decades. Every embrace, every party, Every late-night whisper was purely transactional, a calculated scheme designed to ensure I kept grinding, profiting, and accumulating assets she could eventually seize. 2.5 decades reduced to a legal checklist. Resting in the darkening room, surrounded by fake memories of a joyous union, a freezing, logical mindset overtook my sadness. She assumed she was playing a brilliant long-term strategy, setting herself up for massive payouts while keeping her hands seemingly clean. She severely misjudged her target. She forgot her partner possessed the exact same tactical brain that grew a massive company out of thin air. The rules of engagement just shifted. The silence forced me to analyze everything like the corporate executive I truly am. When exactly did her attitude change from supportive teammate to greedy parasite? The realization hit me like a hammer. The year we scored the massive Civic Center deal, a $50 million agreement, the biggest in our corporate history. I walked through the door that night anticipating a huge party, maybe a nice bottle, definitely the warm encouragement that fueled my past victories. Instead, I found her examining a luxury property catalog with a notepad. "This guarantees we can purchase that estate on the hill," she declared without even glancing upward. "The property featuring the private pool. They want over $4 million. No praise for the massive win. No excitement about keeping 300 workers employed. Only immediate obsession over what my victory could purchase for her. I haven't even broken ground yet. There's drafting, licensing, vendor bidding. But the payout is locked in, correct?" She finally met my eyes, her expression totally cold and calculating. "Once the ink dries, the government must issue the funds." That chat dragged on for hours. She charted out spending budgets meticulously. The massive estate, elite social memberships, premium vehicles, overseas trips. Not our expenses, her expenses. I was too busy stressing over supply chains to catch the warning signs. A year later, her requirements skyrocketed. Joining the elite golf club became mandatory once her friends signed up. Our comfortable lakeside cabin suddenly felt humiliating compared to her social rival's mountain lodge. She started mentioning other husbands who supposedly knew how to pamper their spouses properly. Physical closeness vanished so incrementally I blamed it on getting older and working too much. Sleeping in different rooms became standard because of my loud breathing, even though she never once brought it up during the first 23 years. Evening chats drifted away from daily events and focused entirely on what other wealthy locals purchased or flaunted. Her husband bought her a luxury SUV simply because he values everything she gave up for him, she remarked recently, slicing her meal aggressively. Gave up? As if backing my successful business while enjoying absolute luxury demanded severe personal tragedy. Her close bond with the young attorney ramped up right after our kid's wedding. Suddenly, she grew obsessed with courtroom drama, posing endless theoretical scenarios regarding asset splitting and alimony for some imaginary friend. She began taking private calls in the hallway, blaming them on charity boards or reading groups. How many of those were actually treasonous plotting sessions? I retrieved my device and listened to the recording again. We hold duplicates of every bank record, 2 solid years acting like a faithful partner. The puzzle pieces locked together, her weird fixation on my quarterly earnings, her demands to understand corporate equity, pushing for shared banking while keeping her own accounts completely separated. She was running a covert espionage campaign, while I actively constructed the kingdom she aimed to conquer. But she committed one fatal mistake during her plotting phase. She wildly underestimated the guy who launched a massive enterprise using one rusty pickup and rented gear. That same calculating intellect that survived 35 years of brutal corporate warfare, union strikes, and city hall politics was currently locking onto a brand new target. They believed they were playing a grandmaster game against a total novice. She spent endless months arranging her board, assuming I was completely blind. She was about to find out her target mastered the game long before she ever learned the rules. Standing up, I marched into my private study where rows of business documents filled the walls. Tax filings, vendor agreements, property titles, everything she believed she was quietly stealing. Yet, I held a massive secret. The actual wealth didn't live inside these binders. Grabbing my mobile, I searched my directory until I located the right professional. My longtime financial advisor, a close buddy, and the absolute only individual aware of the overseas trust structures I built ages ago for completely legal tax efficiency. It was time to initiate a sequence that would flip the board entirely. 72 hours of relentless digging turned my study into a tactical command center. Multiple monitors glowed brightly on the heavy wooden desk I crafted myself. The screens showed banking ledgers, public legal portals, and real estate logs. Notepads littered the area, separated into categories: targets, vulnerabilities, schedules, and pressure points. I shaved meticulously, wore my sharpest tailored suit, and put on the spectacles she always claimed made me look important. It is wild how fast heartbreak transforms into military-grade strategy when you possess 3 decades of executive experience. My financial advisor proved incredibly valuable. 3 foreign holding entities I created long ago, fully compliant, perfectly legal, but completely untraceable to anyone lacking elite auditing credentials. Her sloppy spy work entirely missed the actual vault. She cataloged the public storefront while the true gold remained buried deep underground. However, she hadn't been lazy. Her personal charge histories revealed an incredible narrative. Nearly 50 grand in unapproved wire transfers spanning 8 months, dumped into a shared holding account I never authorized. The second name on that account made my teeth grind together: the young attorney. They were operating as a financial unit long before launching their separation plot. Lavish afternoon meals at the elite club, massive salon bills, premium wardrobe updates that perfectly aligned with her supposed charity meetings. Every receipt illustrated a person actively preparing for a brand new reality. Buying an absurdly expensive designer purse just days after whining about the price of milk was incredibly rich. His weaknesses were even more exciting. My industry buddies gladly shared gossip regarding the city's most aggressive young lawyer. The guy attempting to hijack my life savings was drowning in massive liabilities. Almost 200 grand in academic debts, a ridiculous monthly rent for a flashy office, and an expanding history of ignoring basic ethics when cash flow dried up. He is a clever guy, a concrete supplier warned me recently, but he spends like a king while earning like a peasant. He owes several of my guys almost 30 grand combined. Always swears the check is arriving tomorrow, then goes ghost when it's time to pay. The Regional Regulatory Board's public registry showed a pair of dropped complaints from last season, both centered around misusing client retainers. Dropped, but still visible. In that profession, even rumors of stolen funds leave permanent scars. Resting in my chair, I reviewed the ammunition collected over 3 days of silent warfare. They miscalculated their enemy on a catastrophic level. They saw a gullible provider who grinded constantly and never audited the grocery bills. They completely missed the ruthless executive who scaled a tiny crew into a regional powerhouse. My phone buzzed loudly, breaking my focus. My daughter's contact info appeared. "Hey there, sweetie," I answered casually. "How is work? I have to run something by you." Her voice held that careful, clinical tone she reserved for unstable clients. "Is everything stable between you and Mom recently? Things feel incredibly awkward whenever we are all together." My grip tightened. How much was she aware of? Did her husband leak their plot to her? "Why do you say that?" "Minor details. She acts panicked about cash, which makes zero sense given the company's recent wins. And my husband keeps casually interrogating me about your corporate hierarchy. Like, who owns what shares and how the LLCs function?" She took a breath. "It seems like they are digging for data, but I cannot fathom why." Digging for data. My kid's clinical background easily spotted the hunting tactics her spouse and mother foolishly believed were invisible. Probably just normal curiosity regarding corporate operations, I deflected smoothly. She always valued financial stability. Perhaps? She didn't buy it at all. If something was genuinely terrible, I mean catastrophic, you would tell me the truth, correct? That inquiry dangled heavily in the air. Tell her exactly what? That the woman who raised her was actively trying to bankrupt me? That her chosen life partner was the mastermind? That her entire foundational reality was a complete sham? Absolutely, sweetie, but everything is solid, just standard industry stress. Ending the call, I stared at my tactical notes. He was actively interrogating my own child for corporate intel. The scale of their espionage was vastly larger than I initially assumed. It was time to feed them precisely the data I wanted them to choke on. Still digesting that warning, my private line rang. My corporate auditor for over a decade spoke with rapid efficiency. The firewall paperwork is fully prepped for your signature. When you brought up revising your legacy planning, I took the initiative to map out maximum security structures. She paused heavily. This isn't actually about legacy planning, is it? You are incredibly sharp. Nearly 30 years tracing missing funds trains you to spot the hidden variables. Do I want to know what exact danger we are blocking? An inside job. Her silence was deafening. She previously navigated brutal divorces for my site managers. She understood the exact game being played. I will have the entire package finished by lunchtime, she promised. The corporate holdings will be totally walled off from any private litigation. Whoever is gearing up to attack your personal wealth won't even catch a glimpse of the heavy artillery. By mid-morning, I sat opposite the regional banking director, a guy I golfed with for over a decade. His premium boardroom smelled like rich coffee and expensive wood. Comforting terrain where I previously hammered out massive commercial loans. Complete security audit, I announced, pushing the thick folders across the mahogany. I require every single shared access terminal verified and instantly locked down until identity can be proven. His eyebrows shot up. This is an extreme measure. Every single shared ledger, credit facility, and auto draft? Every single one. Can I ask why? No, you may not. I offered a tight grin. How fast until the freeze takes hold? The moment you sign, all authorized users will get a system alert stating that access demands physical presence, a government ID, and a secondary verification. He watched my eyes closely. This is going to create massive friction for her. That is exactly the point. The digital locks engaged just before noon, right as she settled into her fancy weekly lunch at the elite club alongside her wealthy friends. My device vibrated with the initial rejected charge shortly after midday. I was calmly reading over lumber invoices when her frantic incoming call lit up my screen. Something is critically wrong with our banking, she panicked. My plastic got rejected at the restaurant. The branch claims there is a mandatory security lockdown. Do you have any idea what is happening? Flawless acting. Zero mention of the secret fund she shared with her young lawyer. Zero admission regarding the vanished 50 grand. Zero confession that she was shifting capital behind my back. Security lockdown? That sounds intense. Did they explain the trigger? Something regarding identity checks and ledger access. It is incredibly humiliating. I'm sitting here with my entire social circle, and I cannot even cover my own salad. Her panic was completely real. Not because her master plan was failing, but because her public image just took a massive hit. After decades together, I knew exactly what she valued most. I will ring the director right away, I lied calmly. We will clear this up. Obviously, I never made that call. I drove straight to a commercial job site where my guys were laying concrete for a massive clinic. The loud rumble of diesel engines and shouting foremen felt wonderfully normal after days of silent digital combat. My screen lit up with texts all afternoon. Still locked out. This is totally absurd. His assistant claims he is booked solid. What kind of director ignores premium clients? Even the backup cards are dead. How do I acquire basic supplies? Every single alert delivered pure, icy joy. For decades, she viewed immense wealth as her basic birthright, while I sacrificed my health to generate it. Right now, she was tasting exactly what happens when the golden goose closes its beak. His reaction was far more entertaining. Late afternoon, the private investigator I hired checked in. The kid attempted to pull cash from that shared account 3 separate times today. After failing, he tried to drain a dedicated trust. Looks like your kid's college reserve. That is completely frozen too, just like you ordered. How did he handle it? Furious, screaming at the tellers, screaming about lawsuits, demanding the branch manager. Textbook arrogant lawyer realizing his entire hand just folded. By sundown, I relaxed in my command center, reviewing the day's destruction. Every mutual account blocked, every shared credit line killed, every single scheduled transfer demanding my personal signature. Her ability to tap into our massive fortune was instantly restricted to whatever paper bills she kept in her wallet. The defensive maneuvers were totally lawful, just a spouse securing shared capital during a routine legacy update. The bank director could easily testify that all standard security rules were followed to the letter. However, the two conspirators would read the subtext loud and clear. Their targeted victim was officially fighting back. My phone buzzed again. Her contact photo flashed, but her tone would be pure panic now, lacking all its usual manipulative charm. Let's see how fast traders cannibalize each other once the ship starts sinking. The night watchman at the legal firm barely blinked as she sprinted across the foyer shortly after 7, her expensive shoes echoing loudly. I knew these exact details because my investigator was nursing a coffee across the avenue, watching the main doors. Her hysterical phone call from our driveway was so loud the folks next door easily heard it. Discretion was no longer on her radar. High up on the top floor, his premium suite radiated pure panic. Through the glass, any decent zoom lens could spot them huddled over a desk buried in folders, their physical posture screaming total disaster. He knows. Her panicked voice traveled through the old air ducts into the adjacent suite where my investigator's buddy worked late. He figured it out and he is starving us out. I couldn't even purchase fuel for my SUV. His reply was brutal and completely corporate. The schedule isn't random. You mentioned he showed up at the house exactly while we discussed the split. He clearly caught some of the audio. How much audio? Enough to realize we aren't bluffing. Rustling papers echoed through the vent. We must operate under the assumption that he recorded us. Everything regarding the cash, the timeline, the fees, all of it digitally captured. The heavy pause was incredible. 2 plotters, finally realizing the prey, was actively hunting them. What is the next move? Her arrogance was totally gone. We hit the gas. No more slow play. No more subtle positioning. First thing Monday, I submit an emergency domestic filing demanding instant financial relief. We argue he is committing severe monetary abuse by starving you of shared assets. Monetary abuse? Her tone brightened immediately. That sounds incredibly powerful in court. We frame him as a vicious tyrant who uses wealth to crush your independence. The locked accounts instantly transform into proof of his toxic control tactics, rather than a smart defensive play. More shuffling papers. I need you to list out moments of psychological torture, financial bullying, and fear tactics. Comb through your memories. Every time he blocked a purchase, every time he questioned a bill, every time he used his wallet to control you. That is going to be incredibly tough. He was never strict about spending. Honestly, he gave me everything I wanted. Then we twist his massive generosity into pure manipulation. His endless funding becomes proof that he intentionally made you dependent so he could trap you. Every vacation, every car, every piece of jewelry, is now evidence of his calculated plot to isolate you from reality. The sheer wickedness of their strategy was actually impressive. They planned to take decades of backbreaking labor and endless generosity and magically convert it into a criminal indictment. "What about our kid?" she asked nervously. "She won't just blindly back my story. Her clinical background makes her question everything." "That is precisely why she is vital." He sounded incredibly proud of his twisted logic. "Her reluctance to back you up becomes ultimate proof of how deeply he poisoned this family. We use her clinical degrees against her. We claim he weaponized her own training to make her ignore her mother's genuine trauma. You intend to use my own kid to destroy her father? I intend to rescue your payout. Her medical credentials give her words massive gravity. If she shows any doubt, we spin it as an expert clinical assessment proving his masterful gaslighting." The entire strategy was perfectly evil. Weaponize the kid's medical skepticism, turn massive generosity into a weapon, twist basic account security into a violent crime. "First thing Monday," he stated coldly. "I demand instant restraining orders, stopping any money movement, a massive 15 grand monthly stipend, and total control of the primary residence. By midweek, the judge will view him as a dangerous monster requiring legal supervision. If he pushes back, we hit harder. Criminal harassment if he calls you, stalking if he hires someone, psychological damage if he defends himself." He chuckled darkly. "The incredible thing about domestic law is that fighting the charges makes you look even more guilty." Her answering laugh was completely lifeless. "The poor guy. He has zero clue what is coming. Time to show him the brutal reality." They wasted another full hour sinking their lies and plotting total warfare. Every past interaction was going to be weaponized. The basic cash grab just mutated into a full-blown assassination of my character, aiming to vaporize my wealth, my relationship with my kid, and my local legacy. As she exited the lobby late that evening, her screen already displayed his newest text alert. "Remember, you are a severely traumatized survivor, finally brave enough to flee your captor." The ultimate showdown was officially greenlit. The weekend arrived, finding them both at a cozy local cafe where they always shared a monthly brunch. She grabbed their standard hidden booth, perfectly isolated. However, she was now playing the role of a desperate patient begging for clinical rescue, rather than a caring parent. "I have to discuss your dad," she began, her tone dripping with manufactured fragility. "I strongly suspect his mind is breaking down." My daughter placed her mug down carefully, instantly switching into her professional analytical mode. "What exact symptoms?" "Domineering actions, intense paranoia. He completely choked off my banking access, saying it was a security issue. But—" She let the sentence hang, hoping the clinical imagination would do the heavy lifting. "How long has this behavior occurred?" "Many months, maybe longer. I just blamed his corporate workload, but recently he entirely blacklisted me from our shared wealth. I couldn't even buy a sandwich." My kid leaned in, her medical training overriding her familial bias. Restricting capital can absolutely signify domestic abuse, but it also frequently happens during corporate restructuring or legal audits. What was his official reason? The clinical neutrality totally derailed the manipulation attempt. She wanted immediate outrage, not an objective audit. "He says it is standard banking protocol, but we have been together for decades. This isn't standard. This is pure retaliation." "Retaliation for what exactly?" She froze. How much truth could she spill without blowing her cover? "I suspect he knows I am unhappy in our marriage. He might be starving me out to force me to stay." "Look." The response was incredibly patient, like talking to a confused teenager. "Are you stating he is actively starving you to block a legal split? Or are you stating you are planning a legal split and he is simply locking down the treasury?" That surgical precision sliced right through the lies. She pivoted instantly. I am stating his actions are wildly erratic. With your medical background, I hoped you could diagnose the situation. With my medical background, I know that sudden extreme actions always have a clear catalyst. What specific event occurred a few days ago that made him instantly freeze the treasury? Her brain spun violently. The kid was way too educated to swallow emotional bait without hard data. Every single inquiry exposed massive plot holes in the survivor script. I have no idea what caused it. That is why I am terrified. But the clinician was already tracking the micro-expressions and verbal dodges with ruthless efficiency. Are you seeking objective psychological guidance, or are you demanding I pick a side in a divorce battle? That blunt reality check completely shattered the scam. The required emotional validation wasn't going to happen. I am begging you to help me comprehend this family crisis. Then I highly recommend you sit down and speak directly with him regarding his actions, rather than demanding I medically evaluate him based entirely on your biased summary. She stormed out of the cafe shortly after, seething with rage over the clinical rejection and panicking about the fallout. If the kid wouldn't blindly validate the trauma script, the entire legal strategy was doomed. Meanwhile, miles away at my corporate hub, I was gathering tactical information that would obliterate their entire foundation. My industry buddy called mid-morning. Figured you should hear this. The young lawyer is facing massive heat from the regulatory board. Word on the street is they are auditing his escrow accounts regarding that massive commercial dispute. What kind of heat? My brain instantly calculated the angles. Multiple tradesmen filed official grievances over missing checks last month. He took the settlement cash from the client but never paid the actual workers. Classic escrow theft if the investigators nail him. How deep is the hole? Deep enough that the board fast-tracked a disciplinary review for next week. He is desperately hunting for $23,000 to pay off the angry workers before the gavel drops. $23,000, the exact figure my digging uncovered. Would these tradesmen be open to chatting if a major local developer called them for a reference check? 100%. They are absolutely livid. He dodged them for half a year, blaming court backups and paperwork. These are tiny crews. They cannot survive those kinds of hits. I burned the next few hours making surgical strikes. The electrician waiting on $7,000. The plumber owed $9,000. The roofers missing $6,000. Every single call followed an identical script. A massive corporate builder doing standard background checks before handing out a lucrative legal retainer. Every single worker eagerly unloaded massive dirt regarding his shady accounting, broken promises, and total lack of ethics. Shortly after lunch, I possessed a mountain of verified evidence proving he routinely used client escrow as his personal piggy bank, directly violating state laws and defrauding local crews. By mid-afternoon, I dialed the state regulatory hotline. I need to submit a comprehensive grievance regarding severe ethical breaches, I informed the agent. This individual displays a massive history of escrow theft and actively lies to commercial vendors. I fed them everything: names, dollar amounts, dates, and hard proof of stolen funds. Multiple tradesmen agreed to back my claims officially. Before dinner, his firm was dodging frantic calls from the regulatory investigators regarding emergency audits and mandatory appearances. The exact pristine reputation he needed to destroy my life was currently burning to the ground. My investigator texted me shortly after. Target just sprinted out of his lobby carrying massive boxes of documents. Want me to tail him? Negative, I replied. I know his exact destination. He was rushing straight back to her, total panic wiping out his arrogant strategy. Their brilliant heist was mutating into a desperate fight to stay out of a jail cell. Let them sweat, let them slip up. The real destruction was just getting started. A couple of days of intense professional stress gave my kid enough time to analyze the entire puzzle. Her arrival at my corporate office felt like the climax of a movie. My building represented decades of grit and honesty. Everything his flashy rented suite desperately faked. My longtime assistant waved her right through, treating her like absolute royalty. I stood up as she walked in, scanning her posture the same way I used to scan her mother's moods. But she walked differently now. Total clinical distance. The heavy aura of someone forced to make a brutal choice. "We must review this entire disaster," she stated, using her incredibly neutral, patient voice. "I analyzed the dynamics for 2 days. I need your objective reality." What narrative did she spin? That you are a tyrannical abuser using money to inflict psychological damage. She sat down smoothly. She desperately wanted me to weaponize my medical licenses to validate her fake trauma. The cold clinical terminology was shocking to hear, but I respected her method. Isolate the emotions to process the raw data. "What is your assessment?" I asked. I assessed that she attempted to manipulate my brain the exact same way she manipulated yours. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Provide the hard data. I need to hear exactly what triggered this." I paused briefly. Pressing play meant permanently destroying her illusion of a happy family. But she was a fully grown adult, a licensed medical professional, entirely equipped to face reality. I triggered the audio file. Once that clueless old man signs those documents, our entire scheme will be complete. Her facial muscles didn't twitch for 60 seconds. Total professional armor as she listened to her own mother trash decades of loyalty. She absorbed his ruthless calculations regarding my fortune. But when the audio hit the phrase 2 solid years acting like a faithful partner, her armor fractured. Her fists balled up tightly, then slowly released. The playback finished. The heavy silence was suffocating. "How long were you aware?" she finally whispered. "Nearly a week. I caught that exact audio outside his place." "And you spent the week doing what? Assembling a tactical defense while faking a smile?" "Essentially, yes." She leaned back, her brain working overtime. "She literally begged me to clinically diagnose you as a monster. She wanted my official stamp of approval on her fake victim story. What was your response?" "That assessing anyone blindly violates core medical ethics, and her wild claims totally contradicted your entire historical baseline." Anger finally bled into her tone. "She tried to turn my own education into a knife to stab you with. The massive gravity of the treason crushed us both." "I hate that you got pulled into this mess," I offered softly. "I don't." Her voice turned to steel. "I prefer factual reality. The only question is our next move." I looked at her, immensely proud of her strength. "That is entirely your call. I will never demand you pick a side." "I already picked one." She stood up firmly. "I side with objective truth over toxic genetics. I side with verified data over fake tears. And I absolutely back the parent who never asked me to violate my clinical oaths." Massive relief washed over my chest, instantly chased by dread. "What happens with him?" Her expression turned freezing cold. "My partner actively engineered a plot to bankrupt my dad while trying to use my own medical clinic as a shield. That relationship is permanently terminated." "Are you certain?" "I'm not reacting out of blind fury. I'm reacting to verified behavioral data." She walked toward the exit, pausing briefly. "I will speak the absolute truth in a courtroom if required, but I absolutely refuse to be anyone's attack dog, including yours." "I totally respect that." "Excellent. Because I have one final errand to run." She marched out with terrifying purpose. A half-hour later, she would step into her own residence and emotionally execute the man who torched her entire reality. I sat completely alone among my corporate files, feeling a totally alien sensation, actual optimism. She unlocked her front door shortly after 7. He looked completely shocked to see her arrive so early. He was sprawled across their sofa, legal binders everywhere, a bottle of liquor sitting way too close. "We require a conversation," she declared, dropping her bag with absolute finality. "Brutal shift," he mumbled, faking interest in a random folder. That big deposition got pushed back. I am fully aware of the plot. His head snapped upward, the slick attorney facade totally shattered, exposing pure terror underneath. What plot? The exact plot where you and my mother actively schemed to wipe out my dad's wealth while demanding I use my medical degrees to back up fake abuse charges. She didn't sit down, keeping the physical high ground. I listened to the tape, every single syllable. He placed his glass down with terrifying slowness. I assume you are confused? 2 solid years acting like a faithful partner. Does that ring a bell? All the blood vanished from his face. The hotshot litigator suddenly resembled a guy standing on the trapdoor of a gallows. Exactly how much did you listen to? The entire thing. The asset splitting, the calendar, your exact cut, and her glowing reviews of her own acting skills. She stared at him with zero empathy. Was our actual wedding just part of your corporate strategy? A few days later, her mother learned a brutal lesson about high society. Gossip travels infinitely faster than court filings. The elite dining room was absolutely humming with weekend chatter, but entire sections went completely dead quiet the second she walked past. Her closest card-playing buddies suddenly found their salads incredibly fascinating. Another close friend literally faked a phone call to escape. By the time she reached her reserved booth, she realized her massive secret was officially public domain. We certainly missed your input at the charity vote yesterday, a rival sneered with fake kindness. What vote? Nobody called me. Oh, really? We implemented some major roster updates. I'm sure you comprehend. She finally recognized the brutal sequence, ignored texts, canceled galas, heavy doors locking shut with terrifying speed. Meanwhile, I launched my own public relations strike with absolute flawless execution. Decades of honest handshakes bought me bulletproof local credibility. My morning coffee with the banking director was a tactical masterpiece. I leaked just enough vague tragedy to establish the narrative without looking petty. They apparently cooked up some deeply alarming strategies regarding my life savings, I muttered sadly. I was forced to activate extreme security protocols. His reaction was perfect. Pure professional outrage mixed with deep sympathy for a betrayed buddy. The commercial council meeting that night was equally effective. When colleagues asked why she skipped the massive charity auction, I played the deeply wounded patriarch perfectly. You occasionally learn that people are completely fake, I sighed heavily. Decades together, and it turns out she was actively plotting. Honestly, I'm just thankful I caught it early. By Sunday night, she was a total social ghost. The elite club initiated an emergency vote to strip her access. The charity groups accepted resignations she never actually wrote. His professional empire burned down simultaneously. Multiple massive corporate clients dropped him instantly, citing severe ethical red flags. A massive manufacturing firm pulled a $200,000 retainer, sending a brutal letter regarding his total lack of professional judgment. Her hysterical late-night call to him was so loud I practically heard it from my own property. "The entire city is aware," she screamed. "I am totally blacklisted from every single venue. We strike the court tomorrow. We force him to play defense. Before what happens? Before they revoke your entire license? Before I am forced to live in my sister's basement?" They screamed at each other until midnight. Traitors finally realizing that shared crimes don't equal shared victories. The next morning was their absolute final gamble. I was fully prepped. Monday morning, she sat inside a notorious downtown legal office. This specific attorney was famous for absolutely ruthless courtroom attacks. The shiny windows faced the exact building where they planned to execute me. However, the lawyer looked incredibly doubtful. "I examined your evidence," the ruthless attorney stated coldly. "His account lockdowns are 100% legal. Shared owners possess total authority to freeze assets during domestic disputes. But it is pure monetary abuse." Her fake trauma act was failing miserably. He is starving my access to the wealth we built as a team. Wealth he built, according to decades of federal filings. The lawyer tapped a file. Your actual financial input is basically zero. You haven't punched a clock since the late 80s. She turned bright red. Her luxurious housewife status suddenly looked like massive financial dead weight. What about psychological torture? Bullying tactics? Do you possess actual recorded proof? Total silence. She spent days desperately trying to twist his endless love and massive funding into a believable horror story. He is very strict regarding cash. He always was. Can you show me police reports? Physical threats? Proof he locked you inside or tracked your mobile device? Every single question blew massive holes in her script. I never yelled, never blocked her trips, never interrogated her social circle. A few streets away, he learned that regulatory boards strike like lightning when massive money vanishes. The morning tribunal call was an absolute nightmare. We secured additional grievances regarding your escrow management, specifically severe accusations of stealing client settlements to fund your personal lifestyle. His grip nearly cracked his phone screen. Those are totally baseless lies. My ledgers are spotless. We possess hard data from local electricians proving they billed you months ago, right after you cashed the settlement checks. Where exactly is that cash right now? The brutal truth. It was sitting in his private checking account, keeping the lights on in his flashy office. What he considered clever juggling was actually massive federal fraud. There were minor paperwork bottlenecks. We booked an emergency tribunal for this Thursday. Bring every single banking record from the past 2 years. By Wednesday night, their total panic birthed a suicidal strategy. Their late-night meeting in his mostly empty suite felt like two doomed soldiers plotting a charge into machine gun fire. We must launch the physical violence allegations, she stated with completely fake bravado. It is the only method to cripple him instantly. Faking those specific charges equals massive felony prison time if we fail, especially considering whatever audio he possesses. What audio? I never confessed to anything on tape. She paused, suddenly recalling the exact conversation that started this apocalypse. That audio just proves we discussed normal legal options, not actual abuse. So we twist reality. You cry on the stand, I argue the law, and we frame the entire marriage as a hostage situation. He stared blankly across the wood. A few months ago, she was just a greedy spouse. Now she was actively suggesting massive federal perjury. If the judge catches us, we both rot in a cell. If we walk away now, I am completely broke and you are permanently disbarred regardless. Her voice was pure venom. At least we inflict massive damage on the way down. Thursday's emergency hearing would finally decide if their insane gamble paid off or if they simply handed me the final nail for their coffins. They had zero idea I spent the entire week logging every single frantic call, every desperate lie, and every panicked meeting. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was the absolute executioner. The massive county courtroom carried a completely different energy that morning. Decades of pristine local respect armored me completely. The presiding judge commanded her room with absolute brutal efficiency, having spent years destroying fake victims and catching brilliant liars. She sat at the table wearing her ultimate survivor costume. Plain clothing, zero cosmetics, shaking hands. It might have looked real if I didn't know the truth. You claim severe monetary torture and physical fear, the judge began reading the frantic filing. Detail the exact moments that triggered this extreme panic. Her voice shook with Oscar-worthy precision. For countless months, he choked off my banking, tracked every penny, and promised to destroy me if I ever tried to escape. What exact promises? Financial ruin, using his massive corporate power to blackball me locally. She paused dramatically. Recently, he completely severed my access to basic survival funds. I sat perfectly still, watching my partner of decades commit massive felonies under oath. Every single lie stacked higher, painting a fake monster out of a guy who bought her everything she ever pointed at. The judge pivoted toward my counsel. "Does the defense have a statement?" My guy stood up with the heavy gravity of a true professional. "We possess hard data proving her statements are completely fabricated. Furthermore, they are part of a verified criminal conspiracy to steal massive corporate assets." "That is an incredibly heavy claim, counsel." "We hold digital audio of the plaintiff and her partner, actively engineering this exact fraudulent scenario." Her face instantly turned the color of chalk. Her ruthless attorney started aggressively whispering in her ear. "But you cannot fix a sinking ship when the hull is completely gone. Permission to enter this media," my guy stated, plugging his device into the massive speakers. Her exact voice echoed off the high ceilings. "Once that clueless old man signs those documents, our entire scheme will be complete." For almost an hour, the judge absorbed the absolute pure evil of their plot. Her laughing about faking love, his exact math on how to steal the millions, their twisted idea to weaponize the medical licenses. The poor fool actually thinks I adore him. I watched her completely fake trauma story instantly vaporize. Her rehearsed tears about fearing for her physical safety looked utterly insane next to her laughing about easily manipulating a clueless idiot. The judge killed the playback. "Do you have any actual defense for this recording?" Her jaw just hung open. Her ruthless attorney looked completely sick to her stomach, finally realizing she was tricked into filing fake federal documents. "Permission to immediately exit this case," the ruthless lawyer stated. "I was entirely lied to regarding the foundational facts." "Granted." The judge aimed a lethal glare at the plaintiff's table. "This emergency request is permanently killed. Furthermore, I am sending this exact audio to the local prosecutors to pursue massive perjury indictments." The heavy wooden hammer slammed down, finalizing the total destruction. A couple of weeks later, the final separation papers mirrored her colossal failure. The verified fraud completely nuked any chance at a monthly stipend. Plus, she entirely forgot about a strict legal document we signed back in the late 90s, which capped her exit payout at practically nothing. His legal career was permanently executed when the regulators finally proved he stole over $100,000 from innocent tradesmen. The latest rumor says he fled to the Midwest to answer phones at a tiny desk. My kid filed her own separation paperwork immediately, citing an irreparably broken trust. She is currently launching a brand new medical clinic specializing in identifying toxic narcissism. Half a year later, she folds shirts at a cheap retail shop located inside the exact same plaza where she used to burn my cash on expensive bags. We both appreciate the dark comedy there. My corporate empire is pulling larger numbers than ever. The local elite rallied behind me during the chaos, rewarding my honesty with massive new development deals. My residence carries a totally different vibe now. Peaceful, quiet, and completely authentic. Zero fake smiles or plotted conversations. Just the comforting noise of weather hitting the exact walls I framed myself, inside a structure that finally belongs entirely to me. She definitely nailed one specific detail back then. I genuinely did adore her. But now, I finally understand how to spot the massive difference between actual devotion and a brilliant stage play. If you enjoyed this tale of justice, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments below.